fusion. In a rack environment, it is combining of data blocks which are shipped across the interconnect from remote database caches to the local node in order to fulfill the requirement for transaction. What is split brain? When a database routes nodes in a cluster are unable to communicate with each other, they may continue to process and modify the data blocks independently. If the same block is modified by more than one instance, synchronization and locking of the database does not take place, and blocks may be overwritten by others in the cluster. This state is called a split brain. What is the difference between crash recovery and instance recovery? When an instance crashes in a single node database on startup, a crash recovery takes place. In a rack environment, the same recovery for an instance is performed by the surviving nodes and is called instance recovery. Okay, what is the interconnect used for? It is a private network which is used to ship data blocks from one instance to another for cache fusion. The physical data blocks as well as data dictionary blocks are shared across interconnects. How do you determine what protocol is being used for interconnect traffic? One of the ways is to look at the database alert log for the time period when the database was started up. What methods are available to keep the time synchronized on all nodes in the cluster? Either the network time protocol can be configured, or in 11g cluster time synchronization can be used. What file components in rack must reside on a shared storage? SP files, control files, data files, and log files must be created on shared storage. Where does the cluster be write when there is a network or storage missed heartbeat? The network ping failure is written to CRS home log file. How do you find out which OCR backups are available? The OCR config show backup can be run to find out the automatic and manually run backups. If your OCR is corrupted, what options do you have to resolve this? You can use either logical or physical OCR backup copy to restore the repository. How do you find out what object has this block been shipped across the instance the most? You can query DBA hist seg underscore stats view query. What is a VIP used for? VIP is an alternate virtual IP assigned to each node in the cluster. During a node failure, the VIP of the failed node moves to the surviving node and relates to the application that the node has gone down. Without VIP, the application will wait for the TCP timeout and then find out the session is no longer live due to failure. How do you know which database instances are part of RAC cluster? You can query read.active instance view to determine the member instance of the RAC cluster. What is Crewman used for in a cluster environment? The cluster has monitors, stores operating system metrics in the CHM repository for all nodes in a RAC cluster. It stores information on CPU, memory, process, network, and other host data. This information can later be retrieved and used to troubleshoot and identify any cluster-related issues. It is the default component of 11g release 2 grid installed. The data is stored in the major master repository and replicated to standby repository on different nodes. What would be possible performance impact in a cluster if less powerful node is added to the cluster? All processing is slowed down to the CPU speed of the load server. What is the purpose of OLR? OLR contains information that allows cluster processes to be started up with OCR being in the ASM storage system. Since ASM file system is unable until the grid processor is started up, a local copy of the content of OCR is required, which is stored in OLR. What is the default memory allocation for ASM? In 10G, the default SGS size is 1G, in 11G, reset to 256M. How do you backup ASM metadata? You can use md underscore backup to restore the ASM disk group configuration in case of ASM disk group storage loss. What files can be stored in ASM disk group? In 11G, the following files can be stored in ASM disk groups: data files, log files, SP file. In 12C, the files below can also be new to stored in the ASM disk group. Password file. What is ASM power limit? This is a parameter which controls the number of allocation units the ASM instance will try to rebalance at any given time. In ASM version less than 11.2, the default is 11. However, it has been changed to unlimited in later versions. What is rolling upgrade? A patch is considered rolling if it can be applied to cluster boundaries without having to shutting down the database in a rack environment. All nodes in the cluster are patched in a rolling manner, one by one, with only the node which has been patched unavailable while other instances open. What are some rack specific parameters? Some of the rack parameters are cluster database instance type, active instance count, undo management. What is the future for the grid? The grid software is becoming more and more capable of not supporting not just supporting HA but for Oracle database, but also other applications including Oracle's application. What components of the grid should I backup? The backup should be include OLR, OCR, and ASM metadata. Is there an easy way to verify inventory for all nodes? Yeah, you can run the patch ls inventory all nodes command from the single node to look at the inventory details for all nodes in the cluster. In real, what is RAC? What is the benefit of RAC over single instance database? In real application cluster environments, all nodes concurrently execute transactions against the same database. A real application cluster coordinates each node's access to shared data to provide consistency and integrity, improve response time, improve throughput, high availability, transparency. What is RAC1 node? RAC1 node is a single instance running on one node of the cluster, while the second node is in cold standby mode. If the instance failed for some reason, RAC1 node detected and restarted the instance on the same node, or the instance is relocated to the second node in case there is a failure fault in first node. The benefit of this feature is provide code failover solution, and it automates instant relocation without any downtime and does not need a manual intervention. Oracle RAC is with shared cache architecture that overcomes the limitation of traditional shared nothing and shared disk approaches to provide highly scalable, available database solution for all your business applications. Deployment of single database across cluster of services, providing fault tolerance from hardware failure or planned outages. Oracle RAC running on cluster provides Oracle's highest level of capability in terms of availability, scalability, and low-cost commodity. Cluster software. Oracle cluster products like Veritas Volume Manager are required to provide the cluster support and allow each node to know which nodes belong to the cluster and available for cluster. With Oracle cluster to know which nodes have failed to eject from the cluster, so that the errors on the nodes can be clear. Oracle Clusterware has two key components, OCR and voting list. Cluster registry holds all information about nodes, instances, services, ASM storage if used. It also contains state information that is there available upon running. The voting disk is used to determine if a node has failed, that is, becomes separated from the majority. If a node is deemed to no longer belong to the majority, then it is forcefully rebooted and will, after the reboot, add itself again to the surviving node. Advantages of RAC. If one node fails, the database won't fault. Nodes can be added or replaced without having to shut down the database. More nodes can be added up to the cluster as workload increases. Virtual IP address is an alternate IP address a client connection with install standard public IP address. To configure VIP address, we need to reserve a spare IP address for each node, and the IP address must use the same subnet as the public network. If node fails, the node's VIP address will be served to another node on which VIP address can accept TCP connection. Give CG. VIP address whatever happens when the node on which VIP address transfers. All interfaces with VIP address fails. All interfaces. Okay. VIP address will happen when clients attempt to connect the VIP address. Voting list is a file that sits on a shared storage area and must be accessible by all of the nodes in the cluster. All nodes in the cluster register their heartbeat information in the voting list so as to confirm their all operations. If heartbeat information of any cluster node is in the voting list is not enabled, that node will be evicted from the cluster. In the cluster maintains heartbeat of all nodes to the voting list. When any node is not able to send heartbeat to the voting list, then it will reboot itself. For high availability, Oracle recommends that you have minimum of 3 or odd number of voting lists. Voting list is a file that resides on a shared storage and manages cluster members. Voting list reassigns cluster ownership between nodes in the case of it. Voting list files are used by Oracle Clusterware to determine which nodes are currently members of the cluster. Voting list files are also used in concert with other cluster components such as CRS to maintain the cluster integrity. Oracle Database 11 list to provide the ability to store the voting list in ASM along with OCR. Oracle Clusterware can access OCR and voting list present in ASM, even if the ASM instance is down. As a result, CSS can continue to maintain Oracle Cluster even if ASM instance is failed. Okay, by default, Oracle will create 3 voting list files in ASM. Oracle expects that you will configure at least 3 voting lists for redundancy purpose. You should always configure an odd number of voting lists greater than equal to 3. This is because lots of more than half of the voting lists will cause the entire cluster to fail. You should plan on allocating 280 MB for each voting list. For example, if you are using ASM and redundancy, then you will need to allocate 280 MB for each voting list. Oracle, why do we need to keep odd number of voting lists? Oracle expects that you will configure at least 3 voting lists for redundancy purpose. You should always configure an odd number of voting lists. This is because loss of more than half a voting list will cause entire clusters to fail. What are Oracle software components? Oracle RAC is composed of 2 arbitrary database instances. They are composed of memory structures and background processes, same as single instance database. Oracle RAC instance uses 2 processes, GES and GCS, to enable cache fusion. Oracle RAC instances are composed of following background process: ACMS, GTX, global transaction process; LMON, global NQ service monitor; LMD, global NQ service daemon; global LMS, global cache service process; LCK, instance NQ process; RMS, Oracle RAC management process; RSMN, remote slave monitor. What are Oracle clusterware process for? Cluster synchronization services manages cluster node membership and runs as Oracle user. Failure of this process results in cluster restart. CRSG, this process manages cluster resources, which could be a database, an instance, a service, VIP address, an application process, and so on, based on resource configuration information that is stored in OCR. This includes start and stop monitor and failover operation. This process runs as a root user. Event manager daemon, background process that publishes events that CRS creates. Process monitor daemon, this process monitors a cluster and provide IO fencing. OPR OCT performs this check and stops running if the wake-up is beyond the expected time. Then OPR OD resets the process and reboots and on. OPR OCT failure results in cluster restarting the node. So the Oracle RAC background processes are ACMS, GTX, LMON, LMD, LMS, LCK, and RMS, RSMN. 8 background processes. And Oracle clusterware processes are OCC, cluster synchronization service, so CSST, cluster ready services, CRSD, event manager daemon, EVMD, process monitor daemon, OPR OCT. 4. Those are 4 processes. That's all for this notes. Thank you for listening.